How do you know that your accountant is doing a good job for you? My name is Eric Miller, Chief Advisor, co-owner at Econologics Financial Advisors, and we created a video that is going to help you determine whether or not your accountant has your best interests in mind and is doing their job. So stay tuned. The relationship between the CPA and the practice owner is obviously extremely important. And as a financial advisor to hundreds and hundreds of practice owners, we've heard the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to the relationship with the accountant. So I wanted to go over some pointers, some characteristics that I think are important for you to look at when you're working with a CPA, because again, they are an integral part of your financial team. And you need to make sure that you're working with someone that is competent. So I'm going to go through a list of things that I think you should be looking for with your CPA. So number one, I really believe that you should be working with a CPA that does understand your particular industry. I say this 1,000 times in many different ways, but as a practice owner, you are different. And the ins and outs of your business may be different than other industries. And I want to make sure that you're working with a CPA that does have other practice owners, that has had some experience in doing returns with other practice owners, because I just think that repetitive nature of seeing, balance sheets and profit and loss statements and cash flow statements in those particular industries does give that person some ability to kind of like help that person in many different ways if they've seen that with many different clients in that industry. So really working with a CPA that understands your industry, I think, is definitely number one. Number two, do they have other resources? What do I mean by that? Well, most of the complaints that I get from private practice owners in regards to their accountants is that they just don't seem like they're giving me good tax strategies or tax advice. And there's a reason for that, is because most of your CPAs really aren't paid for that. They're paid to make sure that your taxes are filed on time, they're done correctly, there's no mistakes. So they do look, in the past to that degree. And, they're not, look, there's 2 million words of the tax code. I mean, there's no way you can expect one person to know all the ins and outs of the tax code. But they should have resources for tax strategists that they can refer you to, that if you are in a condition where your income is really high, there should be the option for you to have different tax strategists that they can recommend to help, lower your tax bill. So they have to have resources. They should have communication lines to tax strategists that they can refer you to if the situation is appropriate. Number three, how do they communicate to you? Now, many of you, and I've heard this because you've told me, have walked out of a meeting with your accountant and you're like, I don't know what that person just said. And worse yet is when you are afraid to go talk to your accountant because you think they're just going to make you feel dumb. And if you have someone like that, then that's the person that really isn't communicating to you with the intention for you to really understand and duplicate what they're saying. So if you're talking to a patient, you're not going to use these big fancy words when you're describing the procedure. You're going to make it simple so that person understands. So you should expect that same thing out of your financial team when it comes to your CPA. Are they communicating to you in a way that it makes sense to you? And they should clarify every point if it doesn't make sense to you. Not only that, are they responsive? When you call them, do they call you back? Maybe not the same day, but they should get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. And are they meeting with you at least on a quarterly basis to get an idea about what your practice is doing this year? Do they see that, hey, you know what, your cash flow looks a lot better and your profitability looks a lot higher than it did last year. Maybe we need to adjust on how much you're setting aside for taxes. That way, when April 15th of the following year comes and you get that dreaded phone call that all of you get where it says, hey, by the way, you're going to owe another $70,000 in taxes, you don't fall to the floor, and start, shaking because you're like, oh my God, you're telling me nobody saw this coming? Okay. That's just the responsibility of you and the CPA to have a better communication line in with each other so that there is quarterly meetings and that they're responsive to the needs that you have. The fourth thing I think is that, are they an obstructionist? What do I mean by that? So are they always telling you, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that, no, that's a red flag, red flag, red flag. If I had $1 for every time I heard a CPA say red flag, I would be a millionaire right now. Maybe not. But here's my point, is that if someone just stops things, okay, and doesn't give you any solutions, that's usually an indicator that I'm working with someone that is afraid, that's always in fear. And the price that you pay for working with an accountant like that is you probably end up paying $20,000 to $30,000 more in taxes than what you probably should. I'm not talking about the person that just says yes to everything, but I am talking about someone that has willingness to look at alternative tax strategies, willingness to be able to look at the code and say, that's a gray area where the probabilities are that that's a legitimate deduction that we should take. So I think you have to work with someone that has willingness when it comes to the tax code, because it is a convoluted, complex mess based upon arbitrary opinions and arbitrary laws. So you can't think that it's just black and white, because when you look at people that take advantage of the tax code, they do it in a manner that they utilize the tax code for their benefit. So I want to make sure you're working with a CPA that has that willingness to do that. And I think lastly, if you're working with a CPA that it tells you not to take out company profits, that tells you to leave money in the business, that tells you that you're going to get in trouble if you take too much out in profits, it's going to trigger something, an audit. I got to tell you, I think that is someone that you really need to rethink working with, because this practice of yours is a risky investment and it needs to provide certain profits for the benefit of the household, because you took all the risk to put this practice here. You take all the risk of a regulatory body coming in and shutting you down. You take all the risk of all the debt that you've utilized to build your practice and to hire your staff and to train your staff. You've got to make sure that the profit margin of the business is not only there, but you are channeling it to your household. And if you have a CPA that's telling you to do otherwise, I think they're missing the big picture of why you even have this investment in the first place. So those are some things I think you should look at when you're dealing with a CPA. I hope that helps, and I'll see you on the next video.